Well, we have a quorum now, so I'll call this meeting to order at 10:23.
Wait,
Materials Management Committee.
Jen would like you to wait. All right, now we're ready.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order at 10:23, the Materials Management Committee. We have a quorum. First on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Do you have support?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carried. New business, we have a guest speaker, Mr. Troy Bever, our sheriff. Going to speak to us today.
Thank you so much for waiting around.
My pleasure.
We appreciate you.
And my goal by the end of this is that you pronounce my name right, but that's okay. Well, hello again, Troy Bevere, Lenawee County Sheriff, and appreciate having the time to speak with you today. And as I said earlier, that didn't count. It's once I got the information that I was going to be your guest speaker, I did what I normally do, and that's I dive into information way further than I probably should. And one of the things that I did find out, and I was mentioning earlier, that something about the old ordinance must be pretty right, or the existing ordinance, because it's on, if you go to the state of Michigan, it's one of the 7 or so ordinances that are on there throughout the state of Michigan. So as you look at that, and then as you kind of look at some of the other ones, which I did, normally anytime we start talking about ordinances, I like to find out, okay, who is doing it? Who's got an ordinance, and what is good about their ordinance, and what is it? Because we don't want to kind of reinvent the wheel, which I don't believe that we're looking at doing anyway. But they're all over the place, and Grand Traverse has a very extensive one. I think it's like 20 pages long. So when you get that in depth to it, it might be a little bit too much. But so the ordinance, and I seen in there, I think that's the only one that I read that specifically mentions that the Lenawee County Sheriff has the ability to obviously enforce the ordinance, and to also designate the coordinator, the solid waste coordinator, to issue citations as well. So I did a little bit of checking on that, and we haven't written a citation for that in a very long time. Matter of fact, I don't think any of my people would even know where an ordinance book is at. I don't believe the courts take ordinances written out, and everything we do is done electronically nowadays. So that always lends a little bit of a difficulty when you send something over paper. Matter of fact, my deputies out enforcing the lakes and the waters, they'll write a citation, but then it comes back and it's put in electronically into our system so that people can actually pay it. But even further, so our deputies will end up doing a complainant warrant 9 times out of 10. And what they'll do is they'll do an investigation, and they'll do a warrant or a warrant request. And that's normally how most of these cases get through. So we all know that one of the issues that we see often, or we think we know is out there often, is the illegal dumping, the issue where people will take and dump a refrigerator off the back of a truck way out in the middle of nowhere at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm not saying that does not happen, but over the last calendar year, from May to May of last year, we've only got 8 complaints on it. 911 dispatch only took 8 complaints. So that either means that we're not getting a lot of the complaints, or they're being handled otherwise. So it's definitely a situation where we can improve. We can probably do a little bit more educating people on what to do. one of the things that has changed over the years, not as much out in the middle of nowhere, but everywhere else is everybody's got cameras. There's cameras everywhere. There's probably what, 4 of them on me right now. So a lot of times the complaints that we get either could be on camera or there's a chance that somebody may have seen something. So we do enforce that, and it's just been a while since we've written or requested a warrant on anyone for that. So other than that, I would be happy to take any questions that you might have. It looks, as you move forward, it looks like you're jumping into the changing from the current plan to a different plan, and that means probably there'll be some questions of me in the future, and I'd be happy to answer anything. The way the current ordinance is perfectly fine for us enforcing it. Matter of fact, we don't do a lot of enforcement of that ordinance just because, like I said, our people mostly do an investigation and then they submit it to the prosecutor. So, and the difference between a investigation and submitting and doing a ordinance violation is an ordinance violation. You're basically kind of circumventing the whole asking for a warrant, and you're basically, the ordinance becomes the ticket becomes more or less the whole case right there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you might have one.
I know we've discussed Academy Road how many times?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
We've discussed Academy Road, which I'm sure you guys might be aware of, but it seems to be a dumping ground there.
It does, and I know over the years we've placed cameras out there strategically, and we've done some things. I got to believe that's got to be helping a little bit, because out of the 8 complaints that we had over the last calendar year, none of them were on Academy Road. So again, that doesn't mean that they're not dumping there. It's just no one's calling on it either.
Right.
So
Even a dummy camera can sometimes prevent people from doing something. Oh,
yep.
Jim?
So refresh my memory, I wasn't part of the question on licensing. So if a waste hauler comes into Lenawee County and refuses to get a license, our question is can you enforce that? I mean, and how would we do that?
So there's the ordinance, and then there's also the commercial truck laws. In the past, we've had a commercial truck or a commercial enforcement officer. We still have one, although his credentials probably have lapsed since he hasn't been doing that in a while. I have spoken with Scott Marilat, and my plan is in the future to do that again, to get a commercial enforcement person, someone who probably can do it half-time or part of the time, because I think there's a need for it still. And if that were the case, we could enforce under either the county ordinance or under commercial law.
Yeah, I think Jim's correct. I don't think we're really discussing illegal dumping, because that's covered under a Michigan Code of Laws all in of itself. And there's escalators about cubic feet of yards and stuff like that. There's an MCL for that already. We're really talking about haulers and licensing. That's I think, at least that's my understanding. It's not about who's throwing trash out on Academy Road. That's littering, and the littering is covered under MCL 3248902. Boom, done. Right. That's the statute for littering, and there's subsequent statutes on penalties, but it basically says you can't throw stuff into a roadway or public roadway or private lands. That's a civil infraction that can be escalated to criminal procedures. That's a state law. We have no authority over that. What we do have authority over is essentially the commercial code application and where we're going to enforce it, which goes back to the road commission has had an enforcement officer. In the past, the state police have had weights and measures road officers. Have we had a sheriff's deputy?
We did.
Okay.
We did. We had a sheriff's deputy who actually, we sent to school, got him some scales, and he was doing, traffic enforcement and enforcement of oversized overload vehicles and all of the above for probably about 2 years. He since was promoted to sergeant, and so those skills aren't used quite as much as they were before. Like I said, we are looking at sending another person because the need is there. The need in Lenawee County, whether it's trash hauling or just overweight tractor trailers overall.
Yeah, so my question is this is, the commercial vehicles are going to be licensed as haulers in Lenawee. Those secondary trailers, those types that travel the roadways, how does your officers or how does the sheriff department identify maybe somebody that has a hauling license and somebody that doesn't have a hauling license? So typical traffic stop is usually read by a plate. Is there a way to read the ordinance or a hauler permit off of that plate number? Or do you have to really pull the vehicle over and do a check back at office, I guess, is what.
So to answer that, I would probably venture to say that our people are not educated and not trained on pulling over trash haulers or any of the above. That's not something that they normally get into, because again, it kind of, once you pull someone over, obviously there's not much of a ability, if you see them and you have a reason for a traffic stop and then they start digging, they probably don't have the expertise and the training to know what they're looking for when it comes to that, because frankly, that's never been a focus. I've never stood in front of this group and had this group say, we want your sheriff's deputies to enforce this. And obviously Julie, although can have the ability to do it, I don't see Julie out in a car enforcing it as well. So it does fall back on the sheriff deputies or state police or motor carrier. There is a state motor carrier that does work in the area as well. But again, it goes back to our deputies. That's just not something they're trained to do when it comes to.
I'd like to weigh in really quick to clarify that we're in the process of writing our new materials management plan.
Right.
And we're looking to add, it's all about the numbers for us. So the reason we license the waste haulers is very inexpensive is because we require them to report how much waste we're generating in the county, because we have to report it to the state. And also recycling, we're thinking of adding in if you're collecting recycling. So the problem is we have a lot of haulers that do like the dumpsters and that sort of thing that are not getting licensed. And I believe the committee would like to know what, in the current law, it says, yes, we have the authority. We don't even know how that looks. Like if I wanted to issue a citation, or if the committee, so I believe the direction they want to know is what, if they do include that in the new materials management plan and ordinance, or if there is an ordinance violation, like I mail out the licensing packets every year, and we do have people that do not fill them out and send them back, or do not report their numbers. How do we as a committee or as a department follow up on those? Is there a person at sheriff's office we should contact and say, please issue them a citation? And I believe that's where we were kind of going as a committee on this.
I would say that, taking a first swipe at this, I would say that education would be the first thing that in your position and the committee itself and who you appoint, would want to be the ones that would make sure that you're doing the education and that that it starts at that level. So if you have a hauler that's not doing that, because that's what we did when we were doing enforcement, is we would start with education. If we pulled someone over and you know, they had a farm and something was not right, we said, make it right. You know, we weren't out there to try to ticket everybody and get them, you know, and do the enforcement that way. It was more about, okay, we have a, you know, we want to make sure that we're not tearing up our roads with overweight vehicles. We want to make sure that everybody's, you know, those who need to have the correct licensing has it. But again, we're not in the licensing business, that's you. So we would only get involved if you had someone who was violating it. And after you went through all of your due diligence to make sure that that was taken care of in education, et cetera, then could we get involved in that? Absolutely. I mean, the ordinance right now is already in effect, and do my people have the expertise to do that? No, and that's where some training would come into play. If in fact that's something that Lenawee County and this committee wants to focus on, then it would be an education thing. No different than any of the other laws where, you know, the distracted driving law and everything else. Our people need to be educated when that happens, to make sure that we are familiar with the ordinance and that we kind of know the direction that we have to go in our deputies.
So just to follow up on that, Sheriff, I want to say I don't want to pin you down, but I'm going to try to pin you down here. So let's say we do the education process and we go through all that, because we have some that just blatantly say, you know, life's wonderful. That's great. Thanks for sending us all the information. We're not buying your damn license. Okay. So would it be as simple as, you know, we call up over to the sheriff's department and say, XYZ company is in Lenawee County. We've educated them. We've told them everything. They're not buying a license. And then if you get this person back that's going to be doing that type of work, and then he could find that vehicle sometime when it's in the county and do something?
So I see this probably no real different than the health department when they enforce the health department laws and they have someone who's not following the health department laws. It's kind of the same thing. If you have someone who's not following that, there's a couple of different things. One is you could have your people that, for example, Julie, do the investigation and put it all nice together in a nice, neat package, and either submit it herself to the prosecutor or contact us and we would submit it to the prosecutor and go through us. But again, it would need the elements and it would need the proof in there. So you have proof that this particular company refuses to be licensed. That's one thing. You would need that proof that they are operating in Lenawee County without the license. So you would need that as well. And it would probably be no different. I don't see an appearance ticket being written just because we don't write appearance tickets anymore anyway. So, but I could see that it would be something that that your office and us could work together on, no different than we have on health department violations.
Dave?
If I'm hearing you correctly, Sheriff, what you're saying is complaint driven.
I'm sorry, what?
Complaint driven.
It is complaint driven,
So
correct.
traditionally, for those that don't understand what he means by the health department's process, you may have health department investigative, call it environmental engineer or environmental services, for instance. They go out, they find something's afoul with one of the problems. Typically, as the sheriff describes, there's an education piece. This is how you fix it. Okay, you don't want to fix it. this is what happens if you don't fix it. You have this timeline to fix it. Okay, you still don't want to fix it. Okay, now we're moving into the complaint phase where here's what the ramifications are. So if you find a waste hauler, and this is basically what has to happen, at least that's what I'm hearing you, and tell me if I'm wrong, Sheriff. You find a waste hauler who's operating in the county, you discover that waste hauler is not licensed, you start with education of that waste hauler. If their response is, we're not going to get licensed, then you can escalate to the point of filing a complaint with the sheriff's department to go issue that citation. And here's the evidence that we have associated with that complaint so that they can do their job, because the deputy didn't see this happening in place. It's not something that they're looking for traditionally.
And nor are they the subject matter experts. in that.
Right. So that's somewhat, I think, the process that we wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page on. And that's how you want to see that happening as well. Is that right, Troy?
It really is the way I see that happening. That's the way it's happened in the past, and that's probably the best way. And I understand there's also civil remedies. I'm not an attorney, and I'm not going to try to even jump into what the civil remedies are, but I understand that there are civil remedies as well. So there's that opportunity.
So then the follow-up question from a process standpoint would be is who does she contact, or what's that process? Has that been mapped out very well between the two agencies, meaning the solid waste and the sheriff's department, so to file those complaints with the right people? So that's something I think you guys can just figure out from an internal way. That's just my 2 cents, and you do whatever you guys want to, but.
So normally in the past with something like that, what we would do is we would designate a deputy or 2 or 3 to become the sheriff's office subject matter experts on this. So you're not reaching out, because normally these things don't happen, it's not like a bam, bam, it has to, you have to do something right this minute. Usually it's a long drawn out thing. And what we would do is we would educate a few of our deputies so that they would know what you're looking for, and they would know what the process would be. And if that were the case, then you would have a go-to person at the sheriff's office.
Can I ask one more thing? I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm monopolizing. Is it possible to also help just with the overall education? Because I think some of the other concerns that the committee had are related to kind of the one-off waste haulers that are bringing in the jalopy wagon through the county or something, trash every which way, falling off on the road. Your officers probably encounter them on occasion. If they're aware of the requirements of the licensing, at least they can help with that education piece.
Yes, that's kind of the other education piece of it that we currently don't really concentrate on. We'll write them a ticket under state law for unsecured load as the waste is flying down the road. That would be that situation, but right now, they don't have the expertise to start going into the licensing and figuring out. That would be something that they would either need to have the expertise or need a contact person so that they can call. Right now, if they, let's say they have a accident involving a waste hauler, right now what they would do is they would call Michigan State Police, their truck enforcement bureau of it, and they would respond out to a system, because again, they don't have the expertise in that.
I would like to throw out there what we do as a township, being a township supervisor. We have a code of compliance officer named as, and he works for the court system. I know you know him, but what if the committee wrote into the ordinance to have a code compliance officer that could work directly with the sheriff department, that could do the education, that could do the initial, say, a citation that doesn't really cost them anything, but part of the education, because that's the way we do it. The first notice is just, this is what you're in violation of, this is what needs to be corrected. And then if it goes to a second or third step, and then bring the sheriff department in at that point. That's how townships are handling a lot of code enforcement issues. And then if it doesn't get corrected, then it goes to the court system.
So I'd have to see what that looks like, obviously, because there's a lot to write in an ordinance to make sure that it's sound and legally sound. So that may be they may be an option. I don't know. I don't write ordinances. We just enforce them. Being a county ordinance is helpful in the fact that we're not looking at individual townships, because enforcing an individual township
No,
ordinance.
I'm saying an ordinance
You know.
officer for the county, just for materials management. To look at all those different scenarios, whether it be roadside or a truck hauler or whatever.
I guess that would be up to this committee.
But that would alleviate the initial things with the sheriff department for the education part and that stuff's what I'm thinking, but. Any other questions for the sheriff?
Did I answer all of the concerns?
No question. Just appreciate your patience and thanks for hanging out for me. So apologize for being late. So
No problem.
Yes,
It was a
thank you.
long walk from over there.
Thank you, sir.
I would be, if you have any questions or as you get down the road further, please bring me in on it so that we can do this jointly together. And so that if we have some questions or if we have something that we want to make sure that we address on our end, that we're able to do that. And that way, it would be helpful. I'm pretty sure if I went over and talked to my people and said, hey, if you have a waste hauler that's, doesn't have their license and dumping trash, who do you call at solid waste? And they would go, huh? So it's one of the things where it's not something that they do often. And so there would be a learning curve with it for sure. All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir. Recycling waste hauling report.
They are in the packet and to save time, if anyone has any questions, reach out to me. And for my program coordinators report, again, that's in the packet. Major things to report on next week. I'll be at the Michigan Recycling Coalition Annual Conference in Muskegon, so I'm sure I'll have lots of fun information to share on that. MSU Extension is doing a composting deep dive webinar series that's free. Lots of really good information. They usually have. Scrap tire collection is going to be on May 31st. For those that aren't on the solid waste committee, we voted to pay for it out of county funds because the state still hasn't approved the grants on that. It's going to be 8 a.m. to noon at the fairgrounds. The DOS was down for cardboard a couple of days in March, but it is now fixed. It was a very expensive fix, but now both sides are running. And that is all I have for my program coordinators report, other than what's in there that y'all can read on your free time. And I'll move right along to materials management planning updates.
Yep.
We still do not have our plan approval. Oh, okay.
Can I just make a comment on a report before that thing? I want to thank Julie. Adrian College and their entrepreneur program had a student from Peru, Buenos Aires, that was looking at an anaerobic digester and how it would fit into the county. And through the Adrian College entrepreneur program, they're working on that, and they were looking as where they went from there. And I put them in contact with Julie. She was excellent on having them in, talking to them and getting them lined up with the ISD and moving the project forward. So I think it's great, and it was a great community involvement. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. He's a great kid.
Yeah.
He has to leave the country, so he can't continue his project. So
Right.
But for materials management, we still don't have our plan approval. They did reach out to me this week for the information on our vendor number. So I think we're getting near to where we're going to get approved, and we have everything ready to go once we do to start our composting program and our expanded recycling. We're gonna have to put out RFPs once that comes through, but that is the update right now. The no news is not necessarily good news on that one, but hopefully next month we will have positive news and we'll be rolling on our pilots. So any questions on that? We're not alone. I know some counties have gotten approval, but most of those are not doing any kind of pilots. They're just doing the materials management planning thing. So, and other people's are still forming their committees and writing bylaws for their committees. So we're kind of in the middle on where we're sitting right now.
Any other business? Public comment, any public comment? Not entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
No support? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?